Hi, my name's Dr. Timothy Jones. I teach history at the University of Glamorgan. My research is into the history of religion, sex, and sexuality, and I'm just starting a new project on the history of love and romance in the 1950s. Today, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the history of fundamentalism. I teach the history of fundamentalism in third year here, and it's quite an interesting course. I think it's quite innovative. Not many universities teach about fundamentalism, oddly enough. Our current thinking of fundamentalism is really dominated by September 11 Islamic extremism and terrorism. And since September 11, fundamentalism has been used almost as a political insult to describe any kind of extreme ideology. So we have fundamentalist Muslims, fundamentalist Buddhists, fundamentalist Hindus. We even have economic fundamentalists. The term's been used so widely that people sometimes wonder, does it have any meaning anymore? So to work out if fundamentalism is useful, is it a useful concept, we're going to look back into the past to see how it's been used and what is its origins. The word fundamentalism was coined early in the 20th century. It grew out of a theological controversy in the Protestant Church in the United States. It was a response to a crisis of faith due to new ways of reading the Bible. People started to critique the historicity of the Bible, its authors, and this began to undermine key doctrines of the Christian faith, such as the virgin birth, the resurrection of Christ, and so on. So a group of American fundamentalists decided to try and move back to the fundamentals of the faith. And until the middle of the 1920s, a whole group of Protestants in America self-identified in a positive way as fundamentalists. And they were really popular. They were the dominant group among most Protestant churches. One journalist describing this new movement said, if you're riding a train through the countryside, you heave an egg out the window, 9 times out of 10 you'll hit a fundamentalist. So fundamentalism began as a concept, as a positive identity for people trying to go back to the basics of their faith. It sort of got into trouble when they started to have conflict about evolution. You may have heard of the Scopes monkey trial in Tennessee. They banned the teaching of evolution in schools. One enterprising young teacher accidentally taught evolution. They hadn't taken it out of the school textbooks, as it happened. So he accidentally taught it. He realised he had and volunteered to go to trial to test the case. It was a great show trial. It was covered in all the papers in the States. And it ended up humiliating the fundamentalists. They won on a technicality, but they were embarrassed in the national press. So after 1926, the term took on a derogatory notion, and fundamentalists sort of stopped self-identifying as fundamentalists. They split off from the mainstream and kind of went underground. They left the mainstream churches. They formed parachurch or independent organisations and sort of went completely off the radar. And we didn't hear much about fundamentalism until the 1970s. In response to the sexual revolution and all the chaos, drugs, sex and rock and roll that went on there, religious conservatives in America again started to identify as fundamentalists, going back to the fundamentals of the faith. And so for a brief window of time, we again had a group of people positively identifying as fundamentalists. But again, they quickly ran into trouble. In 1979, the Iranian state was overthrown and became a religious state. It was the first religious political revolution. And the press in America, having used the term fundamentalism, the term fundamentalism having come back into political discourse, rapidly identified these Islamic revolutionaries as fundamentalists. There was a problem in that, though, in that the theological controversies that were the origin of Christian fundamentalism were in no way reflected in this new Islamic movement. Islamic fundamentalists were political revolutionaries, anti-colonial, a nationalist kind of movement. So there's no conceptual comparison in a theological terms between Christian and Islamic fundamentalism. So in the 1970s and 1980s, the term fundamentalism moves from being a theological term to being a political term. And so it can be quite confusing when we think about its usage, in that it's used in different ways by different people. And then following the Islamic Revolution, we sort of know the rest of that history with Islamic-based anti-colonial, anti-colonial and nationalist movements in Afghanistan, the Mujahideen, Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda, using fundamentalism as a political tool rather than a theological movement. Thank you.